We are so excited to welcome you to the Freq Show podcast, where we center our content around the frequency of belief.
Why? Because when we overcome fear and self-doubt, basically by getting out of our own way, we can make the impossible possible.
And in this podcast, we are going to share our favorite mindset tools and life lessons that have completely transformed our lives and businesses. So without further ado, let's get freaky.
Hello, and welcome back to the Freq Show. I'm Sam Thurman. I'm here with my wife, Jacqueline Steele Thurman.
Yes, I'm happy to be here. It's almost Christmas. I have my Christmas blazer on. I've got my glasses. I'm ready to go. I'm in the holiday spirit.
Killer Christmas blazer.
I like having a Christmas blazer. Thank you very much. I like all of the holiday things. I like holiday traditions. I like creating traditions for our son. So I'm all in.
Yeah, I think I'm renewed on the holidays after a hiatus as a young adult. Now entering into my 40s and having a child, I think the holidays now have a different importance or a higher
I feel like you're rushing
around
a
them.
little bit because you're not going to be 40 until March of next year.
Well, you always feel like that, but
Well, you started saying that you were almost 40 when you were like 34.
I did not say when I was 34.
Yes, you did.
It would have been when I was past 35. You round up.
I'm offended.
When you
I'm
pass
37, so I'm almost 40.
Okay, I'll speak for myself. I round up. That's what you're taught in math, right? You round up after 5 and you round down before 5.
Just as an aside to our wonderful listeners, I'm looking directly into the camera if you're watching this on YouTube. My wonderful husband has a timing glitch in his programming. So he'll say things to me like, oh yeah, we did that a couple weeks ago, and it will have been like 8 months ago. There's just kind of like a black area when it comes to timing for you.
Yeah, I feel like there are quite a few of those in my brain. Hopefully somebody doesn't call in and diagnose me with something, but yeah, I feel like I've got
We all
some
have
black
little
holes.
glitches. But anyways, that's off topic. Today, we are going to be talking about how to keep momentum. This was such a fun topic to dissect and work on, for me at least. I won't speak for you. But momentum is such an important aspect to business in general, right? And business success. But first, before we launch in too far, I want to talk about what momentum is. Like, let's define momentum. What does momentum mean to you?
Okay, so in our we have a little outline that we follow to try to keep us on track. Parentheses, keep me on track as far as what as far as our conversation goes. And what I have down for momentum is the compounding force that creates an exponential curve in the progress in whatever it is you're doing. It's when you have momentum, that's when everything's kind of falling into place. The energy is positive. You're attracting more like energy. Success begets success. Things are clicking, and things seem to be moving along.
You're in a flow state.
And you're in a flow state.
Yeah.
And like I said, that exponential curve starts to kick in when you have that momentum. How about you?
I feel like therein lies the difference between you and I, because you are so smart and you have like an engineering brain. When I think about momentum, I never would have said like a force that creates an exponential curve of progress in whatever it is that you're doing.
That's immediately what I saw, though. Was like
I know.
This.
And I love that about you.
And to think that I have an engineer brain, maybe it's just a guy brain. I don't know.
Well, I feel like you have much more of a
I'm far from an engineer.
detail-oriented brain than I do. Mine is very creative and ethereal. Okay.
I feel like I don't get enough creative credit.
Oh, you are very creative.
I feel like that's a creative way to explain
It is.
momentum.
It is. You are absolutely right, my dear. I'm sorry if I offended you with a bar graph. Yes. So for me, when I was thinking about defining momentum, I said momentum is the morning coffee of my business. I like it strong, I like it dark, and I like it to pack a punch.
Dark momentum.
Mm-hmm. Momentum is that juice that keeps putting one foot in front of the other and the magical thing about momentum is that it begets more momentum, which is also what you said.
Mm-hmm.
It builds like a snowball. So Sam, I think we need to chat on how to keep momentum for sure. But first, I think we need to chat about how to create momentum. How do you think momentum is created? And I love this question because I feel like for our listeners that may be feeling stuck or maybe feeling like I don't know what action to take next to create momentum, maybe we could give them some micro examples or really tangible things that they could walk away from after listening to this episode.
So for me, creating momentum and sustaining momentum are very much the same thing.
Okay.
And that is having discipline in whatever it is you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
It comes back to discipline and decision making, and discipline from the get-go of taking the first steps. Let me back up a second. The framework is discipline. That's what gets the ball rolling, the discipline to take the steps, and then the discipline to continue to take those steps, to take those actions on a daily basis that are going to move forward, that you know have that impact on your life, on your business, on your relationships, that eventually will compound on each other and create that momentum. So how you do that, or how I do it, if we want to help, offer some tips, is from a business standpoint. Well, I do this in all aspects, but for me, it makes it so simple if I more or less backwards plan from my goal. If I say, I want to purchase X amount of properties every month. And the way that we usually are purchasing our properties or finding our deals is through wholesalers or other relationships. We haven't done direct marketing to sellers in quite a few years. We just found that interacting with wholesalers has been a better fit for us. So what that means is I have to back out of that. How many wholesalers do I have to talk to get a deal? How many deals do I have to evaluate until I find one that works for us? And then I just do the math. Excuse me. And through doing that, I can determine I have to talk to X number of wholesalers every day in order to get X number of leads every month, in order to get X number of deals every month. And if that equates to having 4 conversations with 4 different wholesalers every day, I have the discipline. I have to have the discipline to do that every day. And if I do that consistently, then we're going to get the deals that we need. And if we do that month over month over month, that momentum just builds and builds and builds in the business, because the discipline has brought the consistency into the business.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned this in the last episode, I think it was, but you talked about how there's a lag time between initially taking action and seeing fruit from that action. And Ed Milet calls it the echo.
The echo, yeah.
The echo. And it's so true. Like, you could take really inspired action on something and plant that seed, but you may not see that fruit for a week or a month or even a year. And so having the discipline to continue putting one foot in front of the other and trusting that that action is going to pay off, and then it creates massive momentum.
Yeah.
So do you want to ask me what momentum means to me?
That's exactly what I was about to do. What does momentum mean to you? And do you have anything to add on that?
I do. And when I'm asked questions like this and I have time to like really prepare to answer them, I generally think in terms of numbers. Like, these are 3 things I do. These are 5 things I do. And what I have here are 3 things that I feel like are really important to talk about when it comes to momentum. So now that we've talked about what momentum is and what it feels like and how momentum is created through discipline and action, let's talk about how to keep momentum, okay? how to keep momentum, which was really the meat and potatoes of this episode, because that's where the ROI is. That's where your return on investment happens. It's when you keep momentum going day after day after day. Sometimes it's going to feel more inspired, and sometimes it's not going to feel so exciting. But when you continue to take action every day, that keeps the momentum going. And how do we go even further into that concept of how to keep momentum going? I think it's really simple. And I think the answer to most good questions, they're usually very simple answers. And here's what I came up with. Number one, you choose momentum. You choose it. It's a mindset, and you choose to take action every day toward your goal. And those actions add up. You may not be able to hike through the Grand Canyon in one day, but if you continue step after step after step after step, you're eventually going to traverse the whole thing, right? So those actions add up. And even if it's one thing a day, that one thing is going to lead to big leaps. When I was in the music business, a studio owner told me, Jacqueline, the people that I have seen that have had the biggest success in this business are the people who take some sort of action toward what they want every single day. One thing a day. We can all do that, right? One thing a day. So you choose momentum, and you choose momentum by taking action. Number two, routine helps with momentum. And this is something that, if I have an Achilles heel, is probably my Achilles heel. The creative in me rebels against routine because I like change. I like to be fluid. However, I have learned that if I want to get ahead and seriously create traction and movement and progress, whether it's in my business or my physical fitness or my mindset, I have to have routine. Remove choices, my friends, and you will have more energy for the big stuff. Decision fatigue is a real thing. So get up at the same time, go to bed at the same time, work out at the same time. Be consistent. And I don't do this every day, okay? So I have failed at this more times than I can count. But when I am consistent, when I do stick to a routine, I have so much more space in my head to work on what I want to work on. And that action creates momentum. And in dialing into that routine, again, I'm not creating decision fatigue over silly things like what workout I'm going to do or what I'm going to eat or when I'm going to wake up. It is pre-decided for me, and I just 5-second rule it, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, take action. Did I want to get on the Peloton this morning after Roman was up for several hours last night? No. But did I do it anyway because I knew it would make me feel better? Yes. And that creates momentum. Number 3, don't allow setbacks to offset your momentum. I remember us talking about this, it was maybe a couple of weeks ago before we went to Colorado for the weekend for the Air Force game. And you said something like, I really don't want to lose momentum. I feel like we are just cooking with, what is the saying?
Oil.
Cooking with oil?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say gasoline.
Or maybe it's gas. Cooking with gas. Either way, people know what we're talking about.
Blah, blah, blah. But I said to you, momentum is choice. And if we get out of our routine, it's also within our ability to hop right back in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that first, this is what I think about. That first Monday back is the most important. Like you get back on, Sunday or you get back on Saturday. That first Monday is your reset point where you go, okay, I'm going to get up at 5:30. I'm going to get the workout in. I'm going to knock the things on my to-do list off of my to-do list. And I'm just going to hop right back in like I wasn't away at all.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is exactly what you said in step one is momentum is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So even when you have something that takes you out of your routine,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times I think we've been guilty of this. If we're not able to be in our routine, that gives us an excuse.
And that's what it is, an
subconsciously
excuse.
to lose momentum.
Sure.
When, go to Colorado, have a good time. It's tiring, exhausting. You're traveling with
With an almost 2-year-old.
2-year-old.
Yeah. And he did so well, but yeah, it's tiring.
Have all the excuses to come back and say, well, we need to take a couple days and regroup and level set, yada, yada. When we don't need to do that. Like we can just jump right back into it. There's no reason we can't. And it's just a choice.
Yeah. Well, and I bring this back to yoga where, the ethos of yoga is that yoga is a practice. And you may get back from that vacation and you may be tired and you may feel like you need to regroup. But when you jump back in and you take action, maybe your action isn't the best of your ability that day because you are tired, because you are a little depleted. But action is still action. It's still going to generate momentum. Mm-hmm. So as long as you are taking action, even if it's not at your full capacity, it's still going to make a difference.
And here's the other thing I would offer too is I think when we think of creating and sustaining momentum, it means that we are doing a massive volume of work or a large volume of something. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When that's not really the case. True. The reality is we have to get better at identifying what are the things that create momentum.
What's priority.
And what has the most impact in our lives, in our business, and focus on those things. Because I think I've alluded to this later on is that's an easy way for me to lose momentum is I build all this momentum and that creates a lot of frenzy because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Sure.
And then I start focusing on taking care of the frenzy instead of taking care of what creates the momentum and what sustains the momentum. Mm-hmm. So and that can be a very condensed amount of effort that creates and sustains that momentum. That's the work that's done. That's the work that can be done from 5:30 or 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. And you still are sustaining. You're doing those things that really sustain that momentum, whether that's for you personally, having a quiet time, meditating, exercising, whatever that sustains you personally from as far as your momentum goes, or in your business. It's
eliminating distraction.
Yeah, I think we could confuse
momentum with busyness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we don't want to confuse momentum with busyness because busyness is not going to make you successful. I read, it was a podcast that I listened to. And the host said, or maybe it was an Instagram post. Anyway, doesn't matter. The saying was, the more successful you are, the less you should have on your calendar. The most successful people in the world create a lot of space to think and a lot of space for downtime because that is when they create clarity and that clarity creates inspired action. And that inspired action that is precise gets you further and further and further. We don't want to be busy. We don't want to be adding stuff to our calendar that doesn't matter. We want to be doing that 20% that gets 80% of the result consistently. And I think that is a little bit of an art form in and of itself.
Sure.
And when you are first beginning your business or first setting out to conquer your dream, it can be hard to identify what that 20% is that gets you the 80% of results. So you may wobble a little bit, but that's okay. Over time, that will present itself and it will present itself pretty clearly.
And I would also say that it's a misstep not to really evaluate that consistently, step back and take the time. It will present itself, certainly, but it'll present itself a lot faster if it's examined and you just stop and think logically, like, what's going to have the biggest impact? Like from a business standpoint, sorry, I'm going to talk about being sick in a second, but what are the money-making activities? There's all this crap I can do, all this stuff I can spend my money on and spend my time on and energy on. But what are the money-making activities in my business? You know, I think we've talked about that so many times.
Well, I've been distracted so many times,
and so have I.
Yeah,
and so have I. But I guess to hash that point out again, take the time to sit down and analyze what has the biggest impact. What are those key, what's that key input that is going to create the output that you're looking for? And consistently analyze that as you
consistently
progress.
ask yourself questions. But as far as keeping momentum going, my answer was number 1, you choose momentum. It's a choice. Number 2, routine helps with momentum. So get your routines dialed in. And then number 3, don't allow setbacks to offset your momentum. Just jump right back in. Okay. Now you take it from here. Next stop. Where are we going?
Well, I mean, we're saying the outline says that I'm going to ask you, what's your relationship with momentum? Do you feel like you're good at creating momentum? Are you good at sustaining momentum? And what are some of the relatable things from your experience that listeners can connect with?
I feel like that was a very insightful question on your part, or series of questions.
3-part question.
3-part question. Yeah. So I've got a 3-part answer. No, but I do have an answer to this. And my relationship with momentum, first of all, it's like a drug for me. I want it all the time. I feel like I am constantly chasing momentum and constantly chasing excitement, which if you take that too far is not a good thing. Okay. So I'm aware of that. But do I feel like I'm good at creating momentum? Yes. Am I also guilty of halting momentum? Yes. And that's my own self-sabotage. It's nobody's fault but my own. Okay. But when I'm living on the frequency of belief, and I think you will attest to this too, since you have known me the most intimately for the last 15 years, that when I'm living on the frequency of belief, there isn't much I'm not willing to take on. There is no dream that is too big for me. I naturally think big and reach high. And the way that I sustain momentum is through, I think, accountability. I'm willing to get vulnerable. I'm willing to ask questions. I'm willing to say, hey, Sam, like, what do you see here? You know, am I doing this right? Like, can I get some input? Can I get some feedback? Because I always want to be doing better. And my mom would tell you I've been like that since I was a little kid. I observed as a child people taking the hard way. And so my shortcut and the way that my brain worked was, I'm going to ask my parents all the questions I can ask so I don't have to repeat the same mistakes that they made. And so my mom will tell you I was constantly asking questions on how to do things in a more efficient manner. So it's just the way that I am wired. But going back to accountability, the way that I sustain momentum is through accountability. A great example is working out. So I use the Peloton app all the time. And right now I have a 21-week streak going. That means I've worked out for 21 weeks straight, and it tracks all my workouts. I also love Insight Timer for tracking meditation. So I know this is how long I meditated. This is how many days I meditated. And I'm not like militant about any of these things. If I miss a day, I'm not going to beat myself up, but I want to be working out more days than not. And I want to be meditating more days than not. I also want to be sleeping well more days than not. And the Aura Ring is a great tool for that. I want to be eating well more days than not. I think journaling is also a great tool for accountability for mental health and tracking what's working and what's not. going back to just the way that I'm wired, and something that I think is really helpful and a wonderful tool for people to use, is that I ask a lot of questions. That's why we end every podcast episode with a question. That's why in my podcast, Self-Worth with Jacqueline Steele, I ended every episode with a question, because great questions lead to great answers. And if you want to keep momentum going, ask questions. So a couple of super simple questions that I ask myself very regularly are, what's working here, Jack? What's not working here, Jack? And I get honest with myself. And if I can't figure it out, then I go to somebody that I trust and respect, like my husband, truly, and I'll be like, hey, what am I not seeing here? What do we need to do differently? What can I do better? How can I help? Et cetera, et cetera. And then I think the latter piece to those questions is being willing to get radically honest with yourself. And if you're with somebody else in a safe environment, with a trusted person, getting radically honest with them as well. It is so useful to have that kind of feedback from somebody that you love and trust and respect. And look, sometimes I'm the cog in the wheel when I ask those questions, or I'm the bottleneck. Sometimes the answer is I'm being too nice and letting somebody get away with something that is a bad business practice because I don't want to create ruffles. Sometimes my brain is getting in the way because of the way that I am or not taking action. But when you ask simple questions, what's working, what's not working, and you answer objectively with honesty, you can get a lot of information and clarity. And clarity is such a catalyst for momentum. And I've mentioned this in this batch of episodes a lot because I'm reading it right now. But The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins is such a fantastic self-help book because it's universal. When you need to get going on something, count back from 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and physically move your body, get up, and take action. Just do it. Don't allow your brain or your thoughts to get in the way. Just do what you need to do. Do the next right thing. Do the next right thing. But how about you? How do you feel like your relationship with momentum is? Do you feel like you're good at creating momentum? Are you good at sustaining it? Etc.
Do I have a 3-parter?
You can if you want. You can have 5 parts if you want.
Yeah, before we get into that, I think one thing to mention, as far as you're talking about asking good questions or getting feedback, the thing, Elon Musk talks about this a lot, and that is having tight cycles of feedback. So constantly building in as much feedback, whether that be through personal communication or through systems and processes, he is constantly looking for that feedback to give him clarity, like you mentioned, on the reality of things. Like, what is a waste of time? What is working? What did we what's the word I'm looking for? What did we originally think was going to happen that
maybe didn't?
That didn't pan out, or whatever it is. Getting that feedback as quickly as possible allows you to continue to progress toward the truth, progress toward the goal and the objective, ultimately giving you momentum. And I bet Elon would like my exponential curve explanation.
I'm sure he would.
So.
I'm sure he would.
Side note.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important to piggyback on that concept to not be too attached to any one particular business approach.
Yeah.
You know, you can be attached to an inspired idea and making it come to fruition, to use Elon as an example, going to space in a ship that can also come back and land. You know, so you're not wasting so much money continually building ships. But it appears as though he's not attached to how that happens, just that is the end result.
Right. Yeah. Assumptions was the word I was looking for. Again, the black hole.
I know. And I feel
Such
like
an easy word.
You're working through a cold, so you probably have some brain fog.
Yeah.
I know. He's such a baby when he's sick. He is such a baby.
But I think that we have opportunity everyone does, but I think that we have opportunity to build in that feedback in everything that we're doing, whether it's the podcast, whether it's the flips, whether it's the other investments, raising private money, those sorts of things. Like, how do we make that a standard for us in our business and our lives?
And I think one thing you and I have done well from the very beginning of our relationship is being very honest with each other with so much love. I don't feel like we attack each other with honesty. I feel like we gently remind each other of who we really are and where we want to go.
Sure.
And we constantly do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need to continue giving ourselves feedback, but even we can have our own assumptions, that we create in our vacuum, in our bubble. So that's why it's important to have that feedback outside of us, a third party perspective to keep the momentum going. So, all right. So to your question, how do I relate to momentum, or how do I feel like I
keep it?
I feel like I have developed a pretty good understanding of the discipline that is required to build and maintain momentum. Mm-hmm. I think that I'm pretty good at, like I mentioned before, finding those monotonous tasks a lot of time.
You are so good at that.
That are the inputs that create the output. Mm-hmm. And I'm good at being disciplined around just doing those every day because it just makes it so simple for me to know that today I get up, I exercise, I meditate, I do all of these things to maintain momentum in my health, physically and mentally. And then I do these things in my business to create opportunity and build momentum and sustain momentum in my business. And once that's done, that allows that freedom and that time and space to have those creative, or to foster that creativity that you're talking about. So those things are both vital aspects. It's the monotonous tasks that have to be done that keep and sustain the momentum alongside the space to be creative and think of new ideas that you can implement or whatever it is to go to the next level, and then figure out, okay, what are the monotonous tasks that I need to do every day to pursue those things. So I feel like it's like you said earlier, simple solutions. It's always simple solutions, and then evaluating those as you go and keeping that feedback loop tight. So,
I feel like an important add to that is, as somebody who identifies as highly creative, I think my natural bent is to think of discipline, to think of structure, to think of routine as things that inhibit my creativity. But what I've found is that is a lie. They enable it. That structure creates such freedom within it. And so I'm able to be more creative.
Discipline
and
is
show up
freedom.
more fully.
Discipline truly is freedom. Yeah.
So why don't you talk about your struggle with momentum from a business sense and how it's twofold?
So again, I understand how to build and sustain momentum. I think the things that I get tripped up on are getting distracted is one, and part of that is when I start maybe doubting what I'm doing for no good reason, or feeling like I need something else to supplement what I'm doing. I think the cause has been a number of things throughout the years, but
and some of them very understandable causes.
Sure. All in the, a lot of it just being the process of getting to what is the focus, I think, over time. But getting distracted is one of the challenges that caused me to lose momentum and then ultimately lose consistency in business. And then the other one is what I mentioned before, is getting bogged down in administrative type stuff, in the $10 an hour, $20 an hour tasks that are a result of the opportunity, the momentum that I've created. Now, where we are today in our business, and we've been through a couple iterations of this, is, you know, having the systems and processes in place so that doesn't become an issue, and hiring the people to delegate those tasks to on a daily basis, and making sure they are set up for success and they have the resources they need to. So if you're an entrepreneur and you haven't read the book E-Myth, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you read that book and take it to heart now, before you ultimately end up going through the cycle that they outline in that book, because it could not be more true. And to basically give you the cliff notes of that book, what happens in most businesses is Sam starts a business. He does his business really well because he cares a lot about what he does and he's an expert at what he does. A lot of people want to become Sam's customers because he cares about what he's doing and he's really good at what he does. So his business grows and it grows, and he starts to get more business than he can sustain. So he hires people, and he's so overwhelmed with everything that's going on in his business. And he's getting burnt out. He brings on these people to help him, and he just starts to do what they call delegation by abdication. Like, hey, Jack, you're hired. This is your job. Here, go do it. Take care of it. I'm just relieved not to have to deal with it anymore. So then, not that you would do this, but
never.
Jacqueline comes on. It's not her business. She is not an expert, yet I'm still expecting her to perform at the level that I performed at when I didn't give her the tools, the processes, the systems, and the education to be able to do so. Things start to fall by the wayside. The business starts to go downhill. I start to lose customers, and then I have to let Jacqueline go, and I have to make my business small again. And
take on all the taskers again, because you don't think that you can have a successful business if you hire it out.
I have to start the process over, and I either do the same thing, repeat the same cycle, or I build the processes, I bring in the systems, I put the framework in place to educate the people that I'm hiring in order to make sure that they can come on and be set up for success. It's more or less about creating a franchise model in your business. So where we're at right now is we've gone through that cycle now a few times in a number of different businesses. And so we're working together now full time, and we're at the point where we need to make sure that we're creating the systems and processes in our business so we can bring on those people and delegate, not by abdication, but by preparing them for success and setting them up for success. So I say all of that to explain this is where we are in the process of our business in order to keep and building momentum and doing more and scaling our business the way we want to scale it. We're in the mode of needing to make sure that we can put those processes in place, and that's an ongoing thing.
It is an ongoing thing, and I think it's something that we will continue to experience for as long as we are entrepreneurs. I really like this concept that Naval Ravikant came up with. Well, I don't know if he came up with it, but in the book, The Almanac of Naval Ravikant, he says, I have in my mind a target hourly wage. And he says, mine is very high. So he started with like $1,500 an hour is what he wanted to charge people. And then I think it went up to $4,000. Then I think it went up to $5,000. And, now who knows what it is years later. But he said, if I can hire out a task that is less than that $1,500 an hour, that needs to be hired out. And I think that's a very simple way of putting what we're talking about into perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worth your time or is it not worth your time?
Yep. Yeah. But then you, like we said, you have to, obviously you want to hire it out, but you want to make sure that they're able to do it when they have the tools to do it once you hire them on.
Oh yeah.
So
got to be hands-on.
Excuse me. So it's the Freq Show. We're all about frequencies. Really at the core, that's what we want to communicate, and we want to share, and we want to reinforce in our own lives how important that is. And I think it's just going to continue to become more and more apparent that that's what the universe is created by. So along those lines, how do you match your frequency with creating momentum? You said it was a choice earlier.
Mm-hmm.
What does that process look like for you?
Like, what does it feel like, essentially?
Well, how do you go? Yes. What does it feel like? And how do you go about putting yourself in that?
Yeah. Because frequency is certainly, it correlates to feeling. And the higher your frequency, the better you feel. You know, at the top of the range of frequencies is joy, happiness, peace. At the bottom is shame, guilt, fear. So I like your question. How do you match your frequency with creating momentum? And the thing that came to mind immediately is gratitude. Gratitude solves so many frequency issues, truly. When I want to raise my operating frequency, or when I feel like I'm in a funk, the fastest way to do that is to start listing things I'm grateful for and feel into them. Maybe it's my relationship with my husband and how we are creating this business that we have been talking about creating for several years now. And now we're in the thick of it and we're doing it. Or my son and his beautiful little face and how he's starting to speak, and he comes up to me and he looks at me with so much love in his eyes and he goes, "Hi, Mama." That's something that when I think about it, I immediately feel a shift in the way that I feel. Maybe it's something that I'm looking forward to. Like, for instance, today, having dinner with my mom and my brother. We're recording these episodes in November. They'll be aired in December, but we're about to roll into Thanksgiving. So maybe it's thinking about that love and that connection that I'm going to feel tonight. Maybe it's a book that landed in my lap. Maybe it's a show that I'm watching that is just really like hitting me in the best way or inspiring me. Feeling that, like naming that gratitude, but then feeling it in your body. Like, this is such a magical experience to be on this planet right now with all of these opportunities that I have. Whether or not you are a fan of the United States of America, the fact is we have so much freedom and opportunity here. We hit the lottery being born in this country. We have so much to be grateful for. And then there's so many serendipitous moments, meeting people. The fact, just for instance, that we're in this podcast studio, what happened was my dog passed away in March. I was devastated, and I was in this area. Sam and I decided to get ice cream, and I walked past this sign that said Pod Populi podcast recording studio. And I got curious about it, and I was like, hey, that's a great idea. I have a podcast. I'm going to look into this. The reason we're here is from a serendipitous moment. And though losing my dog was so hard, it's also led to all of these other things. So life, though it can be harsh, is also incredibly beautiful. And when I think about what I'm grateful for and I really feel it in my bones, it changes the way that I feel. I get excited, and that excitement immediately creates motivation, and that motivation spurs action, and repeated action creates momentum. So gratitude is just a bedrock for so much when it comes to frequency. But what about you? How do you match your frequency with creating momentum?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same formula. Basically, thoughts become feelings, feelings become actions, actions become reality. And when it comes to matching my frequency with momentum, it's really more just about sitting in the quiet and feeling what that momentum feels like, what it feels like to have X number of projects going at any given time, what it feels like to be on vacation with you and Roman in Greece or where in the Mediterranean or wherever it is, putting myself in that, making.
So that visualization is really powerful for you.
The thing is I don't like really saying visualization, because to me, it's not a visual thing. To me, I focus on what does it feel like? I know visualization is important for a lot of people.
Sure.
But what resonates with me more than visualization is the feeling, because I think it's all about how do you create the frequency like we're talking about. And for me, focusing on the feeling of what it feels like to be in those places, what it feels like to accomplish those goals, what it feels like to be that person that you are, that you have as your goal or have as your target. What does it feel like to be that person? Because if we are all frequency, and I know and can change my frequency to feel what it feels like to be that person, now I am that person, because my frequency is, that's what we are, is vibration and frequency. So now I have literally put myself in the future state, and I am that person. And so in theory now, physical reality starts to form around my vibration.
Feeling. Yeah. And I think an important note to that is the visualization allows you to get clarity on the feeling. And the feeling is what creates the frequency.
Yeah. I don't mean to say I don't visualize. I do. There is a visual aspect.
I feel like you're really good at I would say you're better at visualization than I am.
I'm the best at visualization.
And he's so humble about being the best at visualization. So it's important. The visualization creates the feeling, and the feeling creates the frequency.
Yep.
Okay. Let's end with some questions for our listeners. Why don't you ask the question that you came up with, and I'll ask the question that I came up with, because I also feel like this is just so indicative of our personalities.
Wait, which one were you?
You came up with the one that says Jacqueline next to it, but that wasn't what I came up with. So you ask that one, and then I'll ask mine.
Okay. So question for the listeners. How do you match your frequency with creating momentum so you can start to experience that invincible feeling that coincides with the exponential wave of progress?
Cool. My question is, what's one thing you can do every day to get this snowball of momentum rolling? And that's it.
You're so simple.
Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.
Christmas.
We'll see you, or we will connect with you in our last episode for December next week. Thank you so much for listening to The Freq Show with Sam Thurmond and me, Jacqueline Steele Thurmond. We would love to connect with you via our website, beckonliving.com, and on social media.
You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at Beck and Living, and you can join our email list to receive uplifting messages, podcast and business updates, and discounts on high-frequency products just for our freaky community.
Cheers to high-frequency living.